I'm Stephanie Cole and I'm obsessed with looking at my 3-month-old puppy and crying.
I'm Monique Hammond and I'm obsessed with Evie Oddly from Drag Race. This is the Modern Adult podcast where we explore the modern adult landscape and ask the dumb questions about adulthood so that you don't have to.
We really have no dignity. This week, we're getting down and dirty with networking. Ugh. Oh yeah, you heard us. We're sharing our own horrors and anxieties about networking and how you can be better equipped to approach it. So this topic is very specific to people wanting to advance in their industry or to meet some super cool people or to either collaborate or get some general inspiration. In theory, networking sounds like a good, valid time, but when you're in the situation, suddenly you don't know words. You have nothing interesting to say, and so you go sit sadly in a corner and you just look at people and hope when they look in your direction, they'll take pity. But it doesn't really work like that. No one owes you shit. And we're only human, and if you were to put yourself in someone else's shoes at these networking functions, you probably wouldn't go out of your way to talk to someone you don't know, especially when you're established in the space.
Networking sucks.
Yes, it does.
Look, that's... Maybe networking is fun for some people. I think networking as someone who's like up and coming is very different to networking to someone who's like established. And Steph and I are both up and coming and not established in terms of like the film industry, which is where we do most of our networking. So it's a bit difficult, I think, when you don't have that much to say about yourself. And I mean, you can present yourself like, I'm Monique, I just graduated and I'm really great at producing. But I couldn't say that to someone in a networking situation.
And that's hard because there's a lot of people in your situation as well. So making that sound interesting is really hard. And I think especially for uni graduates, it often comes off like you have an agenda. And most, like usually, yes, you do have an agenda.
And it's fine to acknowledge that, but maybe try not to make it seem so agenda-y.
So what's your experience with networking?
I have gotten better at it over the years. I mean, I think half the battle for me is like getting to the networking event. Yeah. And sometimes I go to networking events and I only talk to people I already know. And then other times I go and I chat to so many new and interesting people. But that's like only sort of recently, like the first couple of networking things I went to, I did not make any meaningful connections with anyone, just because I don't know how to. So yeah, it's a bit different, and it's one of those things you only get good at by doing it. So like just by going and just showing your face, and like I know for me and the film industry in Perth, like you kind of network with the same people over and over again. So just by going, people start to recognize who you are. But I understand that's not the case with a lot of industries where you're networking with people you've never met before and will probably never see again outside of a networking event.
Yeah, so I think you're a little bit more equipped to network than I am. I'm a nervous creature, okay? I do not like talking to people at the best of times, not because I'm being rude, because I'm scared and I have social anxiety. But for me, I haven't done a whole lot of it, and that's something that I am trying to change. Monique is way better at just going to them than I am, but
I try and drag Steph along, but she never wants to come. And that's actually brings me to my first tip. Sorry, were you finished or do you want me to?
No, I haven't finished.
Okay, sorry, Steph's not finished. Keep going, Steph.
It's changing a bit lately. I think mainly I didn't want to go was because I had nothing to share. And I feel like at networking functions, people want to know the most interesting parts of you because you're all there for the kind of the same reason. Unless you're very established in the space, I think you're going just to kind of catch up with some friends and whatnot. But when you're a bit younger and you're a bit fresher in the industry, you do have somewhat of an agenda going to networking functions. And for me, it was more probably my own insecurities that like, oh, I'm not good enough. I don't have anything interesting to share. And even if I did go and I was working on anything interesting, it's not at industry standard. It's at like I'm making a home film. And I know it's more than that, but it's not, it's just my own insecurity that it's just like, oh, it's like just a bit of fun, like just not really anything because it doesn't have funding. And I know that's not true because we all have to start somewhere, but that's where my head was at. And I know that's not the right attitude. And I'm trying to get out of those kind of patterns of thinking. But like you said, I think the best way to approach networking is to just keep at it and do it. And I think for me, especially finding my own way to do it has been important. So I've been looking outside of just going to networking functions and looking to social media and LinkedIn, for example. And I've been learning a lot about LinkedIn, especially, and how a lot of people use it is not the correct way and not where it's going at the moment.
And also, just for me being in the film industry, I don't find LinkedIn terribly helpful. Yeah. But I'm sure it is for some people in the film industry. But a lot of really important people in our industry are not on LinkedIn. Yeah. So there's not much point in.
And I think where I'm getting at this, it's just more an exercise in getting myself comfortable and sharing what I am doing. So the way I'm trying to build my LinkedIn at the moment is to share more content and not my achievements.
This is why I don't go on LinkedIn, because people share content that I don't want to read. Not you specifically, but people share content to become more prominent, and it's annoying.
I think it's definitely how you go about it. And I think maybe people who are sharing that stuff are just starting, and when you start, you do come at it from like a weird perspective and it is a bit awkward. And I think that just comes with time being more natural and more authentic, and people respond to that more. Yeah. And it's not something that I'm going to be like focusing on heavily, but for me, it's been just a good exercise because now I'm feeling a bit more comfortable going to networking events. I've got a really exciting project coming up. I'm producing a web series called Moose that just received funding.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
So it is produced by Stephanie Cole and written and directed by Matthew Bowles. And I could not be fucking proud of the two of them. They have done an excellent job.
Yeah,
and they really deserve everything in the world.
Thanks. And it's just, I think it's given me, like, I know I can do this work, but I think it's just, I needed, I hate saying it, but I did need that little bit of validation and that I'm doing an okay job and I'm not completely shit and I should go somewhere else. You know?
In terms of networking, I think having something like that you can talk about as like a starting point is really important, because I know for my first networking events, I would go in and people would be like, what do you do? And I'm like, no one's ever asked me that before. So I'm not sure what I do. Like, I'm at uni and I might graduate. Well, and then I guess I'll try and do this. And like, no one wants to hear that. That's like, you need to go in and be like, I'm like, even if your project hadn't got funded, you could go in and say, oh, I'm Stephanie and I'm working on a web series at the moment and it's super interesting. And like, there was a time when like I was working on a web series and I was doing a bunch of stuff, but I'd still go to networking events and people would be like, what do you do? And I was like, nothing. Yeah. I don't know. Hey. And you've just got to be confident. You've got to be doing something, and then you've got to actually put that together into a coherent, interesting sentence to tell people about. So like if I was going networking now, I'd say, hi, I'm Monique, and you know, I do this in the screen industry and I've been working on this project, you know, and if you go in just kind of wishy-washy about yourself and your skills, why would anyone want to talk to you? Like, what value do they have in adding you to their network?
I think, definitely having some belief in yourself and your own ability, yes.
Which is so hard. Like, I'm not saying that it's not hard, but you've really got to just make a decent sentence about yourself and memorize it for when people ask you what you do.
And I think in doing that as well, you need to be excited about what you're doing, because when you tell people about your project and you are telling them with like the same excitement that you feel about the project, it might not be like the most amazing thing in the world to them, but if you're coming at them with like so much excitement, like, oh my God, this is the best thing I'm doing at the moment and I'm like so thrilled to be doing it, they're going to be like, oh my God, that's great. Because when people come at you with that, like, it's really great to hear, because I like hearing people who are doing amazing things that they love, and it's just very infectious. So even if it's not beneficial to me, just hearing other people talking about doing what they love is exciting, because you know that they're in the right place. They're in the right place to be moving forward, and they're doing things, and they're not doing things for the sake of doing things to progress. They're doing it because it's meaningful to them, and that's exciting to hear.
Yeah. And also when people tell you about what they're doing, make sure you listen and like remember what they're doing. Don't just wait for your turn to speak and like network with, you know, and to just be ready to talk about yourself. Like you've really got to think about who you're networking with and like know what they're doing. I know one thing that you should do before networking events obviously is prepare. And like the way I would prepare for networking events is, say it was like an event hosted by an industry group and they had a Facebook page, like I can go through and I can look at who might be attending and say, oh, okay, so this person from this company is attending and I know that company's working on this web series. So if I run into them, I'll have some knowledge about who they are. And I'm not turning around being like, oh, I've never heard of your company before. Tell me what you do. And I have a bit of...
It's probably also annoying hearing that, because they probably don't want to talk about that so much.
Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, I think it's just good to have a basic idea of who's going to be there. And if you get the opportunity to talk to them, like what's something that you might be able to talk about, and you don't want to go in, like, again, film. So you don't want to go to someone and be like, oh God, I love making drama things. And they're like, well, I only do documentaries, so there's no point in us connecting, you know? So you've got to be aware of who you're speaking to in that sense.
Yeah. So when you go to networking functions at the moment, what are you hoping to get out of them?
I just am really interested in like the film industry where we are. So I like to know what people are doing. So if someone's like, oh, I'm working on getting a feature film up and like it's in development, I'm like, that's amazing. Like I want to hear about that so that when that feature film gets up, I can be aware of its production and then I can watch it when it happens. And also like, I think, look, sometimes you're networking to get a job as well. Like I'm not in the market for a job at the moment, so I'm not networking to get a job. But there was a point where I was going to these events and networking to meet people that maybe they do have a production on, and I could send them my resume and they could say, oh, maybe you would be good for like a runner role or whatever. You know, so when I network, it kind of, you get different things out of it at different stages in your life. And I think you should be aware of what you want out of it. And if what you want out of it is, sometimes I just wanted to like, just to meet people so that down the road, if I was looking for crew, I would know who they were. Or if down the road I was looking for a work, I'd know that someone had a production on, you know? So that's what I got out of networking. And it will probably be different in different industries about what you want to get out of it. But that's what I got out of it. What do you want to get out of networking?
So at the moment, I'm in a very fortunate space where I do have a few pathways open to me, not necessarily in film, but that is where I want to be. But I'm definitely in a place where I am happy where I am and I'm doing what I love. Like now I'm producing, like I have a full-time job that I really love it. But I'm also working to produce a web series on the side. And so I'm getting the best of both worlds at the moment. And so me going into a networking event has changed a little bit from where I was. Obviously, when I first graduated uni, I'm in a place where I just want to hear about what other people are doing and I want to learn as much as I can. So if I can I don't have an agenda going to very important people and like trying to get a job. It's more like I'm just fascinated in what you do and I just want to hear a bit about it, because for me, I'm just trying to work out who I want to be and what I want to do with my life. And so just hearing other people's experiences and what they're doing in the industry really gives me a bit of context and informs me on what would be the best pathway.
And I think that's a really good goal to have.
Yeah.
And like, not all networking has to be because you want a job. It could be for professional development. So you learn about opportunities that you wouldn't have heard about if you hadn't met a certain person. And
And I think I really just want to start supporting more WA films and television and like produce work that happens in my hometown. I want to start to network with people who are doing similar things to me, because I don't actually know a lot of people apart from the people I went to uni with in the industry, and I want to start learning what other people are doing, what work they're doing, and if I can help at all, because I really love producing work in Perth. I love, like, I don't know, there's just something about it. Like, because there's not a lot here, I think that's the exciting part.
I think Perth and West Australia and Australian film in general gets like a lot of flack, and I think that's really wrong, and that everyone in Australia should support Australian film. And if you're in Western Australia, you should support West Australian film, because there's some fucking good films coming out of West Australia. Like Hounds of Love, gun film, so good.
Fucking good.
You know, and there's like lots of films that are currently being filmed in Perth, like Dirt Music hasn't come out, haven't seen it, but it's you know, that's a West Australian film, and I think you should support your local industry. And that like goes if you're listening in New South Wales. There's going to be some amazing productions around you that you might not have heard of that you should be hearing of.
And I think because I'm like connected to Perth, because I live here, I have grown up here, so I'm very connected to this place. And so being able to grow an industry that doesn't have a lot here, and what we do have is amazing, but I want to be able to work with the people here to be able to grow it and to produce more work and allow more people to see it and see what we can produce here in Perth. All right, so we're going to do a bit of a role play now. Monique's character description is the cool person,
which we already knew.
And my one is the weird, anxious, sweaty one.
Which, again, we already knew.
Okay, so in this situation, I want to network with Monique, and she is someone who, I don't know, is very high in...
I've just produced a really successful short film.
Okay.
And I'm maybe 2 steps above where you want to be in your career.
Okay. All right, so here I am. We're at like a party. Let me just set the scene. Okay, so we're at like...
That was a glass.
We're at a networking party thing. Everyone's wearing like their nice outfits. Everyone's got the alcohols and everyone's a little buzzed. And everyone's in... Are you in a group or are you by yourself?
I've just finished talking to someone and I'm about to go to the bar.
Okay. I like roll over commando style.
Fuck me.
And then I like jump up and I'm like, hey, Monique, I'm Stephanie.
And because I'm a nice person, I'm like, oh, and ignore the commando style rolling and say, oh, hi, Stephanie. It's so nice to meet you. How do you do?
I'm good. I really liked your short film that you did, and at the moment I'm looking to produce a web series. Isn't that a coinky dink?
Oh, that's so great. Cool.
Oh, no.
What's your web series about?
Oh, okay. It's about a middle-aged...
You should have asked about my film.
Oh, no. Okay, so I've watched your film. It was really lovely. I really connected to the main character's struggles. It was very beautiful. I'm actually producing my own web series at the moment. It's very different to yours, but I just wanted to kind of pick your brain about the whole production side of it.
Oh, yeah. Anything in particular? No. Just like the production was really great. WA has some great crew. Anything in particular you're looking for?
I'm stressed.
I noticed.
I'm just gonna...
You're very sweaty.
I'm just gonna commando roll backwards. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of it and learn to network. It's going to get hot in here, mainly because I'm sweating thinking about myself in a networking situation.
And it is actually quite hot in here.
But on with the show. Question 1. How do you approach networking, Monique?
Know who is going to come and know a bit about what they do so you can talk to them. Set a networking goal. This is so one of the things I did. I kept going to networking events and getting nothing out of them. So I set a little goal to myself. So once the goal was, I know this person that I'm really interested in is going to come. So my goal for the night is to talk to her, or my goal for tonight is to talk to 5 people I've never talked to before, even if it's just saying hi at the bar. So I always set myself like a goal, and that made everything easier because it gave me something to focus on.
And I think before you go in, work out what you're excited about.
Yeah,
and so
exactly. Why are you going? Like work out, why do you want to be here?
And what's interesting about what you have to tell the people.
And work out what's interesting about yourself. So there's no point in going and being wishy-washy. You've got to go in and you've got to commit to yourself because you're presenting yourself in a way that in a professional setting. So you need to represent yourself best in that professional way.
And approach it as like an opportunity. You're not always going to get something out of it, but just being in the room, in the space, you never know what's going to happen. So don't go thinking that you're going to get a job out of it. You're going to make these amazing friendships. Just go and put yourself in the room and see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. My last thing is bring a friend, but not too many. So when I go to networking events, you don't want to be that one person in the corner by themselves. I mean, if you don't have anyone to bring, that's fine. Don't bring anyone. You'll be fine. But I always try and bring like one person so I'm not alone and looking weird. But also the worst networking event I've ever been to is where there was like a group of 10 people that I was really good friends with there. And every time I went to talk to someone, everyone would come. And so it was me introducing like the couple of industry people I knew to 10 people, and it was awful and it was awkward. So do not go in a large group of friends.
All right. So what should you say when you approach someone? So you're walking over to them. What do you say?
Hi, I'm your name and I'm a something. It's really nice to meet you. Or, I don't know, I find approaching people the hardest part of networking. So some people you approach really naturally. Like some people you go, oh my God, I love your shirt. And then you have a chat from there. And then other people you just have to walk up to and say, hi, I'm Monique and I heard that you're working on this project and it sounds super interesting. Can you tell me how post is going?
Yeah. So having a question already prepared.
A question. People love to talk about themselves, especially if you've come up to them. And it means you don't have to talk about yourself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So should you wander over to a group of people?
That's so hard. I am always a bit nervous. I get really nervous at networking situations, but I make myself do it anyway. A group, it depends. If I don't want to ever jump into a group and be like, hello, everyone, all pay attention to me now. I find it easier to approach people in small groups. Like maybe if there's a group of 3 people, I tend to only want to talk to one person at a time. So if I was seeing someone that I wanted to speak to in a group, I would go over. But if I didn't know anyone at all in the group in any way, shape or form, like I looked at them and I'm like, you're 3 strangers and I have no idea who you are, I would never approach them. But if I say, oh, okay, you're that casting director, I would go and introduce myself to the group and then maybe try and speak to that person that I knew first, and then hopefully it would all fall into place. But that one thing I find really hard is interrupting people. I never know when to interrupt a group because I find conversations, like I know if, not that anyone ever tries to network with me, but if someone was trying to network with me, I tend to be always talking to a friend. So like they would find it hard to interrupt, but I just kind of hover. And if there's like a natural stopping point, and no one's actively talking, that's when I try and jump in and introduce myself.
I think that's important, just being very self-aware. If somebody is in the middle of a conversation, don't like go over there and be like, hey, I'm Steph.
And that has happened to me once, and it sucked when I had just gotten up the courage to chat to someone who I was really looking forward to speaking to, and someone came over straight away and interrupted me immediately. And I was like kind of a bit blown out of the water because I just started a conversation and I was in the middle of a sentence when someone came over and interrupted, and I was like, that is so rude, and I never want to do that again. And the person who I was chatting to didn't like that we'd just been interrupted either, so he kind of brushed them off because he was already in the middle of something. And all
right. So what do you do if you want something from the exchange?
That's hard.
It's hard because
it depends what you want, because I don't know, no one's ever asked me for a job at a networking thing, but I can imagine that it's really annoying if you are established and that's what people are doing. I think you've got to let it be natural. Like if you want something from them, exchange cards, maybe follow up with them later, and maybe we'll talk a bit about how to follow up.
All right. And some alternative networking advice. I would advise just using social media and creating content. I know it's a bit of a backwards way to approach it, but the more you put yourself out there and the more content that you produce, like this podcast, for example, I would consider as a form of networking as well, because people might not be directly talking to us, but they're listening to me in their ears, and that's a very intimate form. So I think just creating content and putting your face out there and creating,
and making yourself easy to look up as well. Like I go to networking things and I meet someone and then I look them up on Instagram and I'm just like, what are you doing? You know, so I think people should be aware that one, other people are probably looking them up on Instagram, and two, that you can connect in a more informal way via social media platforms.
Yeah, so I think if you're someone like me who is very anxious about approaching people, just reverse engineer it a little bit, work out what your goal is, what your intentions are, and if you can create content instead and engage with people on social media and produce works that people find like interesting or funny, or just they like your opinion or your expert advice, that's something then you can use that to network online, but then you can also work your way up to networking events, and you can, if your face is already out there, people might actually like know who you are or see you, or you can then use what you've been creating to your advantage and talk about it and be like, hey, I'm online at the moment and I'm like writing all these blogs about the industry and it's super cool. What do you think about messaging them to say, hey, like I really enjoyed our conversation. Do you mind if I like bought you a coffee and we chat about it in person?
I've done that so many times. And I think it's super valuable to do that. But I think that's like an informal interview or an informational interview. And I think they're kind of a bit different to networking because it's more about getting information than making a connection. And I have always gone to those with like a clear list of questions, because I don't want to buy you a coffee and like have a chat. Like I've got specific questions that I want to ask you that I need to ask you specifically. So for example, I had an informational interview with someone who she is like a talent agent, and I had really specific questions around like casting and how casting worked in Perth, and what her experience was with casting in Perth, and her experience in particular with short films. And like those were answers that I couldn't get off the internet, and that were things she would know and she didn't have to put a lot of effort into, because like she just knows, so it wasn't like, tell me how you would do this budget or something that was requiring a lot of time, but also wasn't just shit you can Google, because there's nothing worse than people like sending you an email and going, oh, how do you do this? And you were like, let me Google that for you. Like they're experts in their field, they know things that Google doesn't. So that's why you're talking to them, or else you just Google it, presumably.
So that's it for today's episode. You've been listening to Modern Adults. If you'd like to stay in contact or share your thoughts about today's episode, head to our Facebook page, Modern Adults Podcast. If you like what you hear, please leave a review on iTunes and spread the word. And maybe we can be functioning adults who communicate together.